Thank you, Brian. What an opening. Right, next up we have Ian Puddick. So, when people think of superhero plumbers, they think of Super Mario, but we have a real life superhero plumber here. He runs a very successful plumbing company. He was an expert on BBC Rogue Traders. He is an expert on BBC Your Money. He also is the expert plumber on Sarah Beanie's show on Channel 4. Just to say, he wasn't a rogue trader, he's an expert on counteracting rogue traders. What else can I tell you? In a former life, he was a management consultant with clients including the Queen and Buckingham Palace. I think he's got a check from the Queen in his bathroom. But now he's been battling the police state and calling for accountability for years. And we look forward to hearing his latest developments. So big round of applause for Ian.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. Where did you start? I've been arrested many times by the Counter-Terrorism Directorate. I've had my home raided. I've had my plumbing business raided by the Counter-Terrorism Directorate. I've even had my company accountants raided by the Counter-Terrorism Directorate. And all for one thing. This website here, Police Expenses. First of all, it was deemed as a hate website, akin to being anti-Islamic, anti-Semitic, anti-gay, anti-whatever, but the CPS couldn't run with it. So then they classified it as a harassing, threatening website. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm not here just to talk about my case and my experiences. Obviously, having experienced being arrested and locked up on many occasions. I've never voted, so this is not a political thing. I just wanted to make that really clear. Obviously, I was upset. My worldview had been shaken. I didn't believe things like this could happen. You'll see some pictures of me later at Speaker's Corner and me being a pain in the backside. And I would engage people and talk to people about my experience. And you know, they'd look at me thinking, that couldn't happen in Britain. And I'd sympathise with them because I would say, if I was standing there and you were here talking, I wouldn't believe you. I wouldn't believe that this could happen in this country. So I've made it my mission to understand why. Not the how, but why. Why are these things happening? So if I can go through my presentation with you, I do want to make it really clear before I go through my presentation, because I get lots of emails, and if anyone follows me on Twitter, I tweet an awful lot. People saying, well, you know, when you get broken into, when you get beaten up, when something terrible happens to you, who are you going to call? Obviously, it's the police. And it's as if I've lost my right to criticise the police. And I want to make it really clear before I start the presentation now, this isn't a criticism of the police. I'm not an anarchist. But what I want, and I don't think it's an unreasonable request, I don't think anybody here, and all the police officers that I know, and I know lots of them now, agree, it's all about lack of accountability. And I've got some friendly police officers as well, by the way, when I say I know lots of police officers, not the ones that just are arresting me. So police state, what does it actually mean? Basically, this slide speaks for itself. This is the common view. This is the view that I had largely. My parents certainly had this view. You know, the police are public servants and they are there to help us. So this presentation, sorry, before I got distracted by the slide, I'm not here to criticise the police. I'm not anti-police. Yes, if I got burgled, I would call the police. But that does not negate my right or anybody else's right to hold power to account in a respectful, democratic way, not shouting and swearing and calling and making threats, just in a respectful way, questioning behaviours. But more importantly, as you'll see from my presentation, those behaviours stem from the cultures within these organisations. So, the next slide. How do we get from Dixon of Dock Green to police officers armed up to the teeth, battering people, and to these two books here? Now, these are These are really interesting. I don't think I'd find them on many people's coffee tables, but this is Scotland Yard's cocaine connection. We'll be talking about that shortly. And this is the book that the Home Office tried, and the Met Police tried really, really hard to ban. It's called The Untouchables, and it is the Bible of police corruption. It is the Bible of police corruption. Now, when we talk about police corruption, I'm not talking about a police officer stopping his friend at the side of the road for speeding and saying, "Oh, I went to school with you, look, clip on the ear, don't do it again," and shoot off. I'm talking about huge police corruption in as much as turning a blind eye to paedophilia, taking cash bribes. We're going to be showing you a slide of a detective superintendent that in 1986 was taking £100,000 cash bungs. In 1986. And Scotland Yard knew about it, and when they were held to account by World in Action, he retired on ill health and ran the marathon 6 months later. It's hilarious. You could make it up. Now, if you and I were involved in taking drugs, involved in selling drugs, in taking bungs from drug dealers, well, if it was me, I certainly wouldn't be here today. I'd be behind bars, but we wouldn't be retired on an enhanced police pension. It's outrageous. So it's all about the lack of accountability. I was speaking to a former special branch officer on Wednesday evening about my introduction. I was trying to think of something that is quite early in the morning that would be quite engaging and wake people up. And his job was within a small department within special branch. And at public meetings like this, not all of them, obviously, they would ascertain whether they should have an officer present to listen, not to monitor and take photographs of every single person and write lists, but just to gauge the feel of what's going on. And if anyone got up and said, you know, all sorts of terrible things, obviously their name would certainly go in the book. So all I was going to say is if there is anybody here present, please quote me accurately. That's all. Right. What are the police? Well, they are, as it says on the slide, if you can all see that. They are operationally dependent. They are divorced from government. Is that so? The police investigate without fear or favour. And most importantly, whether you're religious or not, they swear an oath on the good book. Yeah, they swear an oath on the good book before God and Queen, whether you believe all this or not, but this is what they do, to be honest, and most importantly, to uphold our laws. That means when you and I are on some minor speeding offence or whatever it is, some minor offence, and there's no real evidence, when you stand up in front of a magistrate and say blah, 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 and when a policeman stands up and says blah, 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 the policeman will always be believed over you because he swore that unique oath. That's what differentiates them. Yeah? That's the only thing that differentiates us from the police. They're human beings, just like you and I, but they've taken this unique oath of office. And all we would like to see as we go through this presentation, for them to be accountable and not to break the law and render that oath meaningless, because that's what happens on a regular basis, as you will see. Right, here's a few examples. When I first embarked on this journey, for me personally, and there's no shortage of there's no shortage of examples of people that have been messed over and had their lives completely destroyed by the police. There's just absolutely no shortage. And obviously, in this short period of time, I've just picked out a few. The first one is Stefan Kisko. He was charged with the rape and murder of a young girl. Stefan Kisko was mentally challenged. The police officers fabricated the evidence. He was put in prison. He was brutalised regularly in prison. I think he was tortured. I mean, it breaks my heart, this story. I just think it's so awful for someone with learning difficulties to have this label, because once you've got that label, it sticks. No smoke without fire and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, DNA evidence cleared him, and then it was investigated. The police officers that framed him knew that they framed him, The evidence in the police files proved that he was innocent. But he was another one off the street, another crime cleared up for these officers. But more importantly, what happened to those officers? Well, no, it was not so much nothing. They retired on enhanced police pensions. Now, I want to know a job, a career where I can go in, I can stuff somebody, get them banged up, and when I get busted, they look, say, pat on the back here, and look, just go away, here's some more money, and off you go. I want a job like that. It'd be great. It'd be easier than plumbing. Christopher Order. I know his sister Janet well, ex-paratrooper, fought in the Falklands, was involved in a pub brawl, was taken to a police station. He was beaten up by the police officers. It was caught on CCTV, and the police officers are heard discussing while he's lying on the floor what they should do with him. They were discussing, should we put him in the cell, lock the door, and then we could say, oh, we found him. It's all on video. Nobody has been held to account. Janet still fights for justice like many other people now. I tried to be representative here by just finding some just different ones. Pat Finucane, lawyer for the IRA, early knock on the door in the morning at his house. He's having breakfast with his wife and his children. Man comes in, puts 14 shots in his head in front of his wife and children. It was a policeman that killed them. What's interesting now, I mean, David Cameron has officially apologised, I think in the last couple of years, because documents have come forward showing that Number 10 sanctioned it and knew about it and turned a blind eye. But going back to the question, this is a very political one, but going back to that, where's this independent police that is independent of government, that is operationally independent, that swears a unique oath to uphold the law? Sorry, we can't break the law, we can't do things like that. Where is that? And as I said, these are just a couple of cases because we don't have much time. Deaths in custody. Deaths in custody. Since 1990 to now, we've got 1,505 deaths in custody. Police officers I know say, well, it does actually happen that people just die, they have a heart attack. People do genuinely die in custody. 1,500 of them? I suggest not. I suggest not. But more importantly, no one, not one person, has ever been held to account. And obviously in those figures is Christopher Order. This is my definition of a police state. Now, I believe we live in a police state, and this is my definition. When you say we live in a police state, people interpret that in different ways. People have a different meaning or understanding of what those words actually mean. Some people might think that it's a paramilitary force on the police, on the streets of London, on the streets of Manchester, on the streets of the UK. You know, you can't breathe, you can't blink. No, that's not what I mean, because clearly we don't live in that place. But this is my definition. I think it's fairly reasonable, based not just on my experience or my worldview, but based on my research and the people that I talk to. When the laws that apply to you and me don't equally apply to the police. Now, on paper, the argument is that they do, because they do, if that makes sense. However, the application of those laws is very, very different. And as we'll see through the presentation, that's because of the cultures of cover-up. I was invited to a select committee at Parliament 2 years ago, and it was called Police Corruption and Police Accountability. And his name's just gone. The Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Bernard Hogan-Howe, stood up at the committee after Keith Vaz had introduced him, and he said, the police in the UK have never been so transparent and so accountable. That's what he said. That's what he said. And he said, I know what you're all thinking. He said, we are held to account by the public. We are held to account by bloggers and tweeters. He made a joke of that. We are held to account by the IPCC, which we will talk about. We are held to account by the Professional Standards Directorate within our police forces. And we are held to account by the media. That was fantastic. Now, if I'd had my experiences, I would have sat there saying, do you know what, you're on the money there, that's absolutely true. You can't get away. You are being pushed from every direction. Everyone's on you. You are transparent, you're being held to account. Because that is largely the perception. That's why he reiterated it. However, after his brief 10-minute summary on how wonderful and accountable the police are, Dr. Jane Westmoreland, a criminologist sanctioned by the Home Office, who had been looking at police corruption and accountability, had 30 minutes on the subject. It was very embarrassing for Mr. Hogan Howe. Her words were very simple. The police are unaccountable. She gave lots and lots of cases that she'd come across. The point is, the cultures within them, and these are her words, not mine, what the police ignore when they talk about corruption and accountability is the blue code. And what the blue code is, you're a good police officer doing the right thing or trying to do the right thing, and there's plenty of them, and it's the majority of them, to be quite frank. But how can really good, upstanding police officers be tarnished by corruption? Police officers will always tell you that it's the odd rotten apple that's spoiling the barrel. I agree with what she said. The good, fine, upstanding officers that know Sergeant so-and-so or DCI so-and-so is up to no good because they're pals. They don't condone what they're doing. They don't get involved with what they're doing, but they turn a blind eye. And in my view, that makes them corrupt. That makes them corrupt. I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to say. How did I get involved with the police? All I can say is, up until 2009, I've been completely clean. Apart from parking tickets, my life was clean. It's a picture of my car when the police were tracking me using satellite technology. Remember, this isn't the Parks Police, this is the Counter-Terrorism Directorate. I had a domestic incident with my wife at the time and her boss, shall we say, no more than that. And however unpleasant that is, if I can be as frank as possible, these things happen and they always will. It's not a crime. The incident between my wife and her boss, it's no more her boss's fault than it's my wife's. It takes two to tango. Obviously, I was very distressed when I found out, and I rang up the boss and asked for my wife to be moved, because she was his PA, while we tried to sort our personal affairs out. He says the F word and tells me where to go. It's fair enough, that's his right. So I ring up, he's the chief executive of the largest reinsurance company on the planet. So I ring up the chairman the next day and said, look, causing any trouble whatsoever. This has happened, I accept these things happen, however unpleasant they are. But I'm just asking if it's possible, if my wife could be moved from working with this chap while we sort our personal affairs out. At some point, I'm not saying I want to move now, at some point in the future. That's what I did. From there, it gets very, very messy. The chap concerned reports me to his local police force for harassment, 1 for calling him, which I did, and then 2 for calling his boss, which I did. The local police force in Sussex turn around and say it's a civil matter, not a criminal matter, and refuse to get involved. They did the right thing. They upheld the law. And the sergeant, in his notes, actually said that that the chap concerned said that there was no last night tango in Paris, and I'd made it up. That was the harassment. And the sergeant, in his notes, said there probably was, because why would I phone up and ask for my wife to be moved? Why would I do that? So the police were good there. A private security company were then called in by this firm that this chap worked for, and they then got the City of London police involved after Sussex police had said it was a civil matter. City of London police, and some strings were pulled, and we got the emails to prove it. City of London police launched the Counter-Terrorism Directorate on me, and they spent £1.5 million plus of your money and my money investigating me. It's called Operation Bohan. It's been debated in Parliament. Now, if I can be what's the time now? It's 10:30. If I can be as discreet as I possibly can, if this last tango in Paris between my wife and had occurred with the milkman, and I phoned the dairy, right, I wouldn't be up on this stage and we wouldn't be having this conversation. Absolutely. Is that fair? Can you see where I'm going? It's an abuse of power. So the police, I've been arrested many, many times. And for me, the marker in all this nonsense was the police took me to, I mean, I'm a big fella, overweight, old, but I'm not violent. I'm not a tough guy. I'm not aggressive. It's not in my nature. Absolutely not in my nature. The police brutalised me in a small room at Snow Hill Police Station. Now, I was just talking to some people at the bar last night and asking them when the last time they were afraid. When was the last time you were afraid? I don't mean nervous or anxious. The last time you were frightened. Well, the last time I was frightened was when I was a child. I get nervous. I'm nervous now. But when was the last time you were scared? For me, it was when I was a child. I came out of that police station in tears because I was thinking, who do I report these thugs to? Who do I report these police thugs that have just brutalised me in a small room? I know, I'll go to the IPCC, they'll hold them to account, they'll get an independent investigation. Well, what happened was the IPCC did investigate, the CCTV got wiped, and the two officers that took me into that room and brutalised me had amnesia. And the IPCC said, we can't do anything. There's no CCTV evidence. The two officers, what can they say? Don't ever remember taking you in that room. A friendly police officer suggested that I go back as a plumber to the investigators at the IPCC and ask them to look at the door locks. Because all the police officers have a small credit card, and when they go through the locks at the station, they open these doors, and those locks give you the time, the date, the officer's badge number, and which way you've gone through the station. So the IPCC investigate that, and lo and behold, there's a route through the police station with these two officers, I'm with them, and as we get to that room, it all stops. So, did I make this up? Did I know where that room was inside that police station? Did I know the route? Could I describe the size and coordinates of that? If I hadn't have been there, did I make all this up? The police officers recovered from their amnesia. They had no choice. But now they told the court, and this is under oath, in court, I'm behind bars in the dock for my website, Police Expenses, which I've proudly created, by the way. This isn't an error. I created that website to expose these thugs. They remembered that they took me there through for an urgent interview. The interview, they didn't make any notes. The interview wasn't recorded. But it was a really important interview because they had just recalled that while they were searching my house, they found a large quantity of crack cocaine in my kitchen and in my bedroom and in the loft room. It's everywhere. The officer was asked, when you saw it in the kitchen, did you discuss it with the other officers? No, I didn't. Did you make a little note in your notepad? No. But when you moved into the bedroom and saw it, did you discuss it with the officers there? No, I didn't. When you get to the loft and you found it up there, did you confiscate it? No. Did you make a note? Don't tell me you forgot to tell the others. Yes, I did. You couldn't make that up. Now, I'm behind bars listening to the charade. I screamed out, the judge told me off. I was so angry. I'm not a lawyer. Did he commit perjury? Did he commit conspiracy to pervert the course of justice? I don't know what the law would be. I'm sure there would be more than one that he broke on that occasion. But after my trial, the IPCC cleared him because another officer coming through on the search said, do you know, I remember a couple of years ago I was there. I saw all the crack as well. I didn't take it. I mean, it's funny because it's so pathetic. It's so pathetic. Now, is this representative of all the police? I want to make this clear. Of course it's not. But there were 16 officers in my house and not a single one of them said, do you know what, you can't go that far, that's a lie. I'm not having that. Yeah? Over a petty matter, over a really petty matter, with a phone call over an affair. You know, someone saying that, you know, give the guy a break. None at all. So it's the culture is, I think the other guys that turn the blind eye are actually worse, personally, because they maintain the status quo. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So this is what I did. This is what I did. I camped on Parliament Square with all the anti-war peace activists. I tell you what's quite funny is hardly any of them would speak to me because I turned up in my tweed jacket, copy of the Sunday Times, and they thought I was an undercover cop. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. What can I say? Perception. Yeah, grow my hair. No comment. It's me, a picture of Speaker's Corner. I go to Speaker's Corner every Sunday with my banners, all talking about the police. They would send undercover cops from City of London Police, not the Met. So I'm in the Met Police's jurisdiction. They would send counter-terrorist cops on a Sunday from City of London to listen to me. And they would try and go, and you can always tell who they were, because the public that were there going, huh? How can this happen? Huh? They're all shocked. And then you get someone in the office saying, who's this guy that's pulled all rank? And I'd say, it doesn't matter about him. This is about the police. The police had choices here. The police had a choice to be independent and to uphold the law, not to spend £1.5 million harassing and arresting someone for nothing. So it's about the police. It's all about the police. Anyway, they'd arrest me at Speaker's Corner. Then I wouldn't be charged. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. You can't see this last lorry here. Obviously, I like to maintain my status as a non-law breaker, but I was so outraged at the time, someone or some people who decided to fight my cause, I'll say no more than that, put banners, 20-foot banners on every road bridge on the M25 saying police expenses on the North Circular Road. The police would take them down, or the Highways Agency or whoever it was, and they used to ring my office saying, we've got your banner here, do you want to come and collect it? No, I'm too scared. Literally, I never collected any of them. So, but yeah, the banners would go up on the M25, they'd come down, they'd go back up again on the North. I just did everything that I could to get this into the public domain. I don't look like a terrorist, I'm not a terrorist, not even a small one, but I've gone to the media with all of this and said, what's going on? Can I speak to journalists? None of the media were interested. I have to say, Andrew Neil, when I wrote to him, he sent a journalist down from The Spectator who was fantastic. But other than the mainstream media, nobody was interested whatsoever. So I really do need to thank Alex G and Brian and his team at the UK column, because they gave me a voice when I was being oppressed and no one would listen to me. People thought I was mad, so I must thank them. Now, to make this really clear as well, I was cleared on a technicality. I was innocent. So, just to reiterate, you know, challenging the police and asking them to be they've already told us, the commissioner at the Met Police, Hogan House, has told us they've never ever been so transparent. Well, that's fantastic if it was true. So just as a member of the public, holding them to account and trying to expose their misdeeds, you shouldn't be criminalised for that. You shouldn't be criminalised for that. Not in any country. How did the police spend over 1.5 million investigating me? Well, at my trial, we had all of the documents from this private security company, a company called Kroll. So when you think of a private security company, we're talking about a little private eye looking at marriage infidelity, etc. These are the world's largest private eyes. They work for MI6. Benedict Hamilton, the managing director, called me and told me before my trial that they would F me like I had never been effed before. Now, how do I know that? Well, one, I got the call, and when I tell people, yeah, right, you're lying. Why would the managing director? He put it in his police statement that he called me and told me that they had deep, deep pockets, and basically they were going to mess with me. And I have to say about Benedict Hamilton from Kroll, he's an honest man. He kept his word. They did do me like I'd never been done before. They messed up my whole life. 3 months before my trial, for my website, Police Expenses, my home is broken into and all my court defence documents are stolen. Who would benefit from knowing what we were going to say? People say, oh, it doesn't matter, you had a copy. That's not the point. One, my privacy's been invaded, my home has been broken into. Who would benefit? the big companies involved. This isn't the police. This has got nothing to do with the infidelity of this chap. This is about the big companies, and I'd made a huge fuss about this, trust me. These two companies here, Guy Carpenter and Kroll, they are two separate companies, but they are part of the same group, so they are sister companies. At board level, I made some very, very embarrassing allegations about corruption between them and City of London Police. And this was damage limitation from them saying, what's this guy going to say in court? What's the press going to say? How can we damage it? Easy. Don't worry, we'll find out what he's going to say in court. We'll just take the documents, and that's exactly what they did. When the Met Police came around and I told them the story and stuff, they didn't particularly care. It's just the way that it works. It's a fun example, and this is absolutely real. There's a rude word in it, so please forgive me. I think you can all probably spot the rude word. A friend of mine very kindly has allowed me to use this is a professional photographer, David Hoffman, and David has built a career, sued the police countless times, never lost. And when they had like the poll tax riots, he wasn't standing up the edge taking pictures. He's actually in there 2 feet from the police officers and from the protesters taking pictures. And he gets battered, he gets beaten, and he knows how unaccountable they are. So I think in all the occasions that he's sued them, he has never lost. I know that for sure. This one has just been settled. At the last election, he put that poster in his window of his front room at his house in East London. David Cameron, I'm not trying to make a political point, but that's what he did. His door is broken down at 6 o'clock in the morning. A team raid his house. He is arrested on a public order offence for publishing a rude word of David Cameron. Now, if we go back to Dixon of Dock Green, would that have happened? The answer is we don't know, but I think the odds are no, it wouldn't have happened, if that makes sense. So this is David Hoffman. He made a big fuss about it. There's lots of articles about Hilly's escapades on the internet. Couple more issues that I really wanted to talk about was the police. How do you make the police more accountable? I don't know the answer. Because as I've said already, the culture within the police forces varies. So, the Met is not the same as Strathclyde Police. The Strathclyde Police is not the same as Bedfordshire Police. But they all have leaders, as in any organisation, and those leaders set the culture within any organisation. Before this, I was a management consultant. I've done lots of work with huge companies. I think it was mentioned that I've done work for Buckingham Palace, and I've even advised the Cabinet Office on crisis communication. How do we change that culture? Well, the answer isn't simple, but it is time, and more importantly, getting the right people in the right positions. Yeah, people that are honest, people that have integrity, and people that aren't afraid to challenge the status quo rather than just stick with the status quo. It's not rocket science, but it takes time. But there has to be the will, and certainly with the police, there has to be the political will to address these issues. And until these issues are addressed, nothing's going to happen. So are you all following me with this? So how do we do it? Well, there are lots and lots of people like me. It's not all about me. There are lots and lots of people like me that have been crushed and trodden that are now standing up. One of the little things I wanted to make you aware of is I've just in the process of creating a website, still being built, called policecrimes.co.uk, and it will catalogue, should be ready in the next week. It won't be complete because there's an awful lot of work to be done. But we've started at 1970, not for any reason, but there had to be a starting point. And we're going to catalogue every police crime, and there'll be a picture of the individual. You click on the individual. Thank you. There'll be a picture of the individual. You click on it, and it will give a brief bio of what's happened to them. If they've got their own websites, which a lot of them do, it will just link to their websites. It's going to take a long time. Once we've got from 1970 to now, will then work backwards, because there is no shortage of this stuff. There is no shortage of this stuff. What was really interesting in my case was how the media chose not to report my case. Now, you've got police officers under oath telling the judge, Your Honour, we found a large quantity of crack cocaine. We had to interview Mr. Puddick immediately. No, we didn't take it. No, we didn't record the interview. No, we didn't make notes. Sorry. That's acceptable. How can that be acceptable today? Now, I think there's a story there. Personally, I got all the emails after my trial from City of London Police Press Office to literally all the media, including the BBC. Now, I'm going to focus on the BBC because they are the state public broadcaster, and people trust the BBC. People generally, no, hear me out. People, I'm not going to get into a discussion about the BBC. The point is, I'm not talking about the people in this room. I'm talking about people generally trust. You ask the average man on the street, they trust the BBC. Yeah, I think of David Attenborough and all that kind of stuff. You know, but they look at the whole package, and it's a sound organisation, which I don't believe it is. I've got the email from City of London Police to the BBC, to BBC News, asking them not to report that any counter-terrorism officers were used at any point in the investigation, in the raids, and in my several arrests over my website. I've also got the email from the BBC saying, we've amended our story. Now, someone's lying here. Either I've made all this up because it's fun, which I can assure you it's not, or it really happened. Why did all the officers take the oath at my trial, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and all the rest of it, give their name and rank, and then say I'm a counter-terrorism officer? Why would they all do that if they weren't counter-terrorism officers? But again, they're not held to account. So all I can ask you to do is just to continue to support people like me that are trying to hold the police to account. We're not anti-police. If we were Merkel, we would call the police. We just want them to be accountable. It's just not an unreasonable request. It really, really isn't at all. But I just really hate being labelled all the time anti-police, because I'm not. And I've made some really good friends with some very senior police officers who I think took pity on me initially and have been very, very supportive ever since. So I'd like to thank you very much indeed.